The locks on my mother's house were brass when I left. When I came back from Okinawa 19 months later, they were silver, and the name on the mailbox wasn't ours. My name is Ray Delcourt. I'm 33. I spent 8 years as a military police officer in the United States Marine Corps, including 2 overseas deployments, and I now work as a special agent with NCIS, the Naval Criminal Investigative Service. My job is financial fraud. I'm the person they send when a staff sergeant's procurement numbers don't add up, or when dependent benefits are being claimed for people who don't exist. I have been trained, since the first week of boot camp, that documentation is the difference between a conviction and a complaint. What my sister Danielle didn't know, what nobody in my family knew, was that 7 weeks before I boarded that transport plane, I had already recorded a transfer on death deed with the Pender County Register of Deeds. The house was still my mother's, but my name was already in the county records. Before I tell you what happened next, tell me, what time is it where you are right now, and where are you watching from? I always wonder how far a story like this travels. My mother, Lorraine Delcourt, was a retired Navy nurse. She raised 2 daughters alone in a 3-bedroom ranch house in Hampstead, North Carolina, a quiet stretch of Pender County, about 20 minutes north of Camp Lejeune. Our father, Gunnery Sergeant Marcus Delcourt, died in a training accident at Camp Pendleton when I was 9. A helicopter rotor exercise. The Marine Corps sent a casualty notification officer to our front door at 6:40 in the morning. I remember the time because my mother looked at the kitchen clock before she opened the door, and I watched her mouth the numbers like she was trying to memorize the last moment before everything changed. She never remarried. She used my father's IGLI payout, Service Members Group Life Insurance, $250,000, to buy the house outright in 2003. No mortgage. It was the only real asset she ever owned. She bought it with his death, and she treated it like a monument. She kept his service portrait above the mantel. She kept the flag from his funeral in a glass case on the hallway table. She kept the house spotless, always, because she said the one thing a Navy nurse could control was the condition of her station. My sister Danielle is 4 years older than me. She became a real estate agent in Jacksonville, near the base. She's good at it, charming, well-dressed, the kind of woman who makes clients feel like she's doing them a favor by taking their money. She built a career on proximity to military families buying and selling homes on PCS orders, and she understood the transactional rhythm of that world better than anyone I've ever met. She understood when people were vulnerable. Growing up, the roles were assigned early. I was the quiet one, the one who mowed the lawn without being asked, who drove our mother to her VA appointments, who re-enlisted because the signing bonus would cover the roof repair Lorraine couldn't afford. Danielle was the one who called on birthdays. She brought wine to Thanksgiving. She posted family photos on Instagram with long captions about gratitude. She performed closeness the way some people perform a closing, warmth calibrated to the audience, always with an exit clause. Our mother said the same thing every Christmas. This house is for both of you. When I'm gone, you split it down the middle. She said it at the kitchen table. She said it over FaceTime when I was stationed at Quantico. She said it the night before my second deployment, her voice thin and careful over a connection that kept cutting out. Ray, this house is yours and Danielle's. 50-50. Promise me you'll keep it in the family. I promised. But Lorraine never put it in a will. She trusted the agreement because she trusted family. She believed saying something out loud, in your own kitchen, with your own children listening, was the same as writing it down. I knew it wasn't. Now, if you've ever been the person in your family who handles everything and gets credited for nothing, drop a comment. Just one word. I want to know I'm not the only one who understands what it feels like to love people who confuse your silence with absence. In the fall of 2022, my mother had a stroke. She survived, but the damage was significant. Partial paralysis on her left side, cognitive decline that came and went like weather. She needed assisted living. She couldn't manage the property. She couldn't manage herself. I was deployed to Okinawa. Communication from that posting was limited. The time difference was 14 hours. I had intermittent access to a secure phone and a personal cell that worked maybe 60% of the time. I could send emails. I could FaceTime, if the connection held, which it usually didn't. Danielle stepped in. She contacted our mother's doctor. She toured assisted living facilities. She signed papers. And she called me on a crackling FaceTime connection one evening. It was past midnight her time, midday mine, and said, "Don't worry about anything. I'm handling Mom's care. The property is fine. Focus on your job. I've got this." I wanted to believe her. I did believe her. Because Danielle had never done anything like what she was about to do, and because the alternative, that my own sister would betray our mother's wishes while I was 13 time zones away, was a thought I couldn't afford to carry into work. So I focused on my job. I investigated procurement fraud at Camp Foster. I reviewed falsified dependent claims. I traced wire transfers and compared signatures, and built cases that hinged on exactly the kind of documentation Danielle was about to ignore. What I didn't know was that Danielle had obtained a power of attorney from our mother. Lorraine signed it in her assisted living room, with Danielle present and a notary Danielle had arranged. The document was a limited POA, healthcare decisions only. It explicitly did not grant authority over real property transactions. It said so in paragraph 4, in language that any first-year paralegal could read. Danielle either didn't read paragraph 4, or she read it and decided it didn't apply to her. She listed the house. She listed it through her own agency, which meant she controlled the listing price, the marketing, and the commission. She priced it at $295,000, roughly $15,000 under market value. She accepted the first offer that came with no inspection contingency. Fast close, clean paperwork. She pocketed a 6% commission on the sale, $17,700, deposited the remaining $277,300 into a joint account she controlled, and began spending. She put $112,000 toward her own debts, car loan, credit cards, a deposit on a vacation property in Wrightsville Beach she'd been eyeing for 2 years. She allocated $94,000 to our mother's assisted living costs, which was legitimate, and which she would later use as her moral shield. The rest she kept in the account for future expenses. She sold our mother's house. The house our father's death paid for. The house our mother promised to both of us. She sold it while I was on the other side of the Pacific, doing the exact kind of work that would eventually teach me how to take it back. I rotated stateside in early 2024. I didn't go to my apartment first. I drove straight to Hampstead. I wanted to see the house. I wanted to sit on the porch where my mother used to drink coffee at 05:30, watching the road like she was still waiting for someone to come home. There was a swing set in the yard, a blue one, plastic, the kind you buy at a hardware store for a 5-year-old. The mailbox had a different name on it. The door was a different color. The flag case was gone from the hallway window. I sat in my car for 11 minutes. I know because I looked at the clock when I pulled up, and I looked again when I finally picked up my phone. 11 minutes of staring at a house that was mine in every way except the one that mattered to the county recorder. I called Danielle. She answered on the second ring, which told me she'd been expecting the call. "Ray, welcome home. How was the flight?" "Danielle, there's a family living in Mom's house." Silence. 3 seconds. Then, "I had power of attorney, Ray. Mom couldn't make the decision, so I made it. Someone had to be here. You were on the other side of the world playing soldier." Playing soldier. 8 years of service. 2 deployments. A career investigating the exact crime she had just committed, and she called it playing soldier. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. I said, "I need a copy of the POA you used," and I hung up. Here's what Danielle didn't know. Before my second deployment, I had gone to the base legal office at Camp Lejeune and spoken with a JAG attorney, Judge Advocate General's Corps, named Captain Erica Munoz. I told her my mother owned a house free and clear, that there was no will, and that I wanted to make sure both daughters were protected if anything happened while I was overseas. Captain Munoz recommended a transfer on death deed, a TOD. It's a legal instrument that doesn't transfer ownership during the grantor's lifetime. My mother would still own the property, still control it, still live in it. But upon her death, Ownership would pass automatically to the named beneficiaries, bypassing probate. I drafted it with JAG assistance, naming both me and Danielle as equal beneficiaries. My mother signed it in February 2022. It was notarized at the base legal office. I personally delivered it to the Pender County Register of Deeds and watched the clerk stamp it, date it, and enter it into the public record. That deed was recorded. It was searchable. It was a matter of public record sitting in a county office 15 minutes from Danielle's real estate agency. Any competent title search before the sale should have found it. Any title company doing due diligence should have flagged it. Either the title company missed it, or they were never told to look, and either way, the sale had a defect. A recorded legal interest existed on that property before Danielle ever typed the listing into the MLS. The second thing Danielle didn't know, I had requested a certified copy of the POA she used. I got it from the county clerk's office within 72 hours of returning stateside. I read it in my car, in the parking lot, with the engine off. Paragraph 4. This power of attorney is limited to healthcare decisions and medical directives. It does not authorize the agent to sell, transfer, encumber, or otherwise dispose of real property belonging to the principal. She exceeded the scope. She had authority to choose a doctor, approve a medication, sign a consent form. She did not have authority to sell a house. And she knew, or should have known, because she is a licensed real estate agent in the state of North Carolina, and understanding the scope of a POA is part of her professional training. I didn't call her back. I called an attorney. His name was Warren Osei Bonsu. Real estate litigation. His office was in Wilmington, 12 miles from the county courthouse. I sat across from his desk with 3 documents in a blue folder, the recorded TOD deed, the limited POA, and the printout from the Register of Deeds showing the recording date. He read all 3 in silence. Then he leaned back and said something I've carried with me since. The most dangerous transaction in real estate isn't the one with bad intentions. It's the one where nobody checks the file. He laid out the situation in plain terms. The sale was potentially voidable because Danielle lacked authority under the POA to execute a property transfer. The TOD deed, recorded before the sale, created a legal interest that should have appeared in any title search. The title company that processed the closing either missed it or was never informed, which meant they had errors and omissions insurance exposure. The buyers, an innocent family who'd done nothing wrong, were protected by their title insurance policy. Warren advised a 3-track approach. First, a formal complaint to the North Carolina Real Estate Commission regarding Danielle's conduct as a licensed agent. Second, a demand letter to the title company's E&O carrier. Third, a preservation notice to the county recorder flagging the defective transfer. No lawsuit against Danielle directly. Not yet, Warren said. Let the institutions do what institutions do. The title company will investigate, because their insurer will make them. The commission will investigate, because that's their function. Your sister isn't the defendant here. The process is. I filed everything within a week. The 4th of July. Aunt Vera's house in Fayetteville. Annual cookout. Danielle had spent the past several months building her narrative. She'd called aunts, cousins, family friends. She'd told them she had sacrificed everything to take care of our mother while I was overseas. She'd positioned herself as the devoted daughter, the one who stayed, the one who bore the weight. She wore that story like a uniform. I arrived in civilian clothes, jeans, a gray blouse. I brought a peach cobbler because Aunt Vera's rule was, you don't walk in empty-handed. I hugged my cousins. I held my niece. I ate a burger and watched the fireworks from a lawn chair next to Uncle Curtis, who was a retired JAG officer and hadn't said much to anyone all evening. After the fireworks, when the plates were cleared and the kids were inside, Danielle started. She stood near the grill with a glass of wine and launched into the performance, the annual recital of her devotion. It's been so hard, y'all, managing Mom's care all by myself. The facility bills, the paperwork, the house. I had to make decisions nobody else was willing to make. I waited until she finished. Then I walked to the picnic table, set the blue folder down, and opened it. I need to say something, and I need the family to hear it. The yard went quiet. Not movie quiet. Real quiet. The kind where you can hear the neighbor's AC unit cycling on. I read the first document aloud. The transfer on death deed, recorded February 2022, naming Ray Delcourt and Danielle Delcourt Barnes as equal beneficiaries of 114 Braxton Lane, Hampstead, North Carolina. Recorded with the Pender County Register of Deeds, notarized at the Camp Lejeune Base Legal Office. I read the second document, the limited power of attorney, signed by Lorraine Delcourt, granting Danielle authority over healthcare decisions only. Paragraph 4, explicitly excluding real property transactions. I read the third document, a printout from the county recorder's website showing the TOD deed's recording date, 7 weeks before my deployment, 22 months before the sale. Then I closed the folder. And I said, Danielle sold a house she didn't have authority to sell, with a recorded deed interest she either didn't find or chose to ignore. I've already filed a complaint with the North Carolina Real Estate Commission regarding her license. My attorney has sent a demand letter to the title company's E&O carrier. I'm not asking for permission. I'm informing the family so nobody is surprised when the paperwork arrives. Danielle's face went through 4 stages in about 15 seconds. Denial first. I did what Mom would have wanted. Someone had to make the hard call. Then guilt. You weren't here, Ray. You don't know what it was like. Then tears. Real ones, I think. Though with Danielle, I've never been entirely sure where performance ends and feeling begins. Then silence. Because Uncle Curtis, who had been listening from his lawn chair without moving, set down his drink and said, quietly, Danielle, she recorded the deed. It's in the county records. There's nowhere to go with this. Danielle looked at him. She looked at me. She looked at Aunt Vera, who was standing in the doorway holding a dish towel and not saying a word. Nobody defended her. That was the part I wasn't prepared for. Not the confrontation. I'd rehearsed that in my head for weeks. I wasn't prepared for the silence of a family that had believed her story for 18 months, suddenly recalibrating in real time. Cousins looking at their shoes. Uncle Gerald clearing his throat, but saying nothing. Aunt Vera folding the dish towel into smaller and smaller squares. I picked up the folder. I said, I love you, Danielle. I don't trust you, and I need the family to understand that those are not the same thing. I left before the coals went cold. The fallout didn't arrive all at once. It arrived the way water finds a crack. Slowly, then everywhere. The North Carolina Real Estate Commission opened an investigation within 2 weeks of my complaint. Danielle's license was suspended pending review. For a real estate agent in a military town, a suspension isn't a pause. It's a signal. Her brokerage distanced itself within days. Clients called to cancel listings. A referral network she'd spent a decade building went quiet overnight. The title company's E&O carrier launched its own investigation. They pulled the closing file. They found what Warren and I already knew. The TOD deed was on record at the time of sale, and the title search had either missed it or been conducted improperly. The title examiner who signed off on the search was placed on administrative review. The buyers, a young military family with 2 children, a sergeant and his wife who had bought the property in good faith, were contacted by the title company's insurer. They were told there was a potential defect in their title. They were told their title insurance policy would cover them. They were told they might need to vacate if the sale was voided, but that they would be made whole financially. I never met them, but I thought about them constantly. They had a swing set in the yard. They had children who thought that house was theirs, and they were collateral damage in a transaction that should never have closed. That's the part nobody tells you about justice. It doesn't land cleanly. It doesn't only touch the people who earned it. It spreads. And some of the people it reaches did absolutely nothing wrong. Danielle attempted a public apology 3 weeks after the cookout. She posted a long message on Facebook, carefully worded, full of passive constructions. Mistakes were made during a difficult time. I acted in what I believed was our mother's best interest. I hope my family can find it in their hearts to understand the pressure I was under. Nobody commented. Not one reaction. The post sat there like a monument to a language designed to avoid saying the word I. A month later, she called me. It was late, past 11. She said 4 sentences. I used the funds for myself. I knew the POA didn't cover the sale. I told myself it was fine because I was handling Mom's care. It wasn't fine. I didn't say anything for a long time. Then I said, "Thank you for saying that." That was the closest we've come to a real conversation since. The title company's insurer settled. The details are private, but the outcome was this. The buyers were made whole. The property transfer was flagged, and the title defect was resolved through a combination of insurance proceeds and a corrective deed process that Warren managed. The house, our mother's house, my father's house, was returned to its proper legal status. The TOD deed was honored. I used a portion of the recovered funds to move our mother to a better assisted living facility, one closer to my duty station, with a memory care wing and a garden courtyard where she could sit outside in the mornings. I visit every Sunday. I bring her coffee in the mug she used to drink from on the porch at Braxton Lane. She doesn't always remember my name, but she remembers the mug. She holds it with both hands, the way she always did, and she looks at me like she's trying to place a face she knows she's supposed to love. I keep our father's flag case on my desk at work. It was in a box in Danielle's garage. She'd taken it from the house before the sale and never mentioned it. When I asked for it back, she dropped it off at my apartment without a word. No note, no apology attached to it, just the case, in a brown paper bag, left on my doorstep like something she was returning to a store. Danielle's license remains suspended. The NCIS investigation is ongoing. She's working as an office manager at a property management company in Jacksonville, a job that doesn't require a license but keeps her adjacent to the industry she built her identity around. We exchange texts about our mother's care, logistics only, medication schedules, facility invoices, the language of 2 people who share a responsibility but no longer share a story. Uncle Curtis called me a few weeks after the cookout. He didn't offer advice. He's not that kind of man. He just said, "You handled that the right way. Your father would have done the same thing." And then he asked if I wanted to come over for dinner on Saturday. His wife was making shrimp and grits. I went. 8 months later, I stood in the clerk's office at the Pender County Register of Deeds. I was filing an updated deed, a revision to the TOD, removing Danielle as a beneficiary and naming a trust I'd established for our mother's long-term care. The clerk who processed it was the same woman who had stamped the original TOD in February 2022. She didn't remember me. Why would she? She stamps hundreds of documents a month. But I remembered her. I remembered the sound the stamp made. I remembered the weight of the folder in my hands when I walked out of that office 4 years ago, knowing I was about to board a plane to the other side of the world, and hoping, genuinely hoping, that I'd never need what I'd just filed. I needed it. They said I was playing soldier. They said I wasn't there when it mattered. But the deed was recorded before I left. The folder was ready before the transport plane took off. The documentation was filed while Danielle was still practicing her caring daughter routine for the aunts and cousins. I wasn't absent. I was prepared. And now, if you're watching this, I want to ask you something. Would you have waited? If someone sold the house your father died for, the house your mother promised you, would you have sat through the burgers and the fireworks and the martyr speech before you opened that folder? Or would you have said something sooner? I waited because timing is a form of precision, and precision is what I was trained to do. If this story stayed with you, drop a comment. Tell me one word. Prepared. Because that's what I want every person watching this to understand. You don't fight betrayal with anger. You fight it with a file folder and a recording date. This story is fictional, created for dramatic entertainment, education, and reflection. But the lesson underneath it is real. The people who protect you aren't always the loudest ones in the room. Sometimes they're the ones who filed the paperwork before they left.